So, welcome back to my channel. Some of you might have been appalled, or rather, you might not have liked the description of this video very much. That Shiv, the Lord of the Outcast, that he's one of the principal deities of Hinduism. But so I'll come to that later. And though I said that in my previous video, I said that I won't be getting into any philosophies, but without that, these stories become just children's stories. They become mere myths. So there are, while these stories, no doubt in itself, they are interesting. They give us an insight about how people of those ages, about their thought process and how these things they have spun, but uh, but like in order to make it more interesting, like in order to get a deeper insight, we need to discuss little philosophies. And again, in the beginning of this video, I'm saying that I'm no expert in this subject, and these are just fleeting thoughts and really an audacious attempt. So I'll just begin with a story like last time. And this also involves a name of Shiv, that is Neelkanto. And Neelkanto, in its essence, what does it mean? Kanto is this throat of any animal, of any being. And Neelkanto, someone who has got a blue throat. And this is a very popular story. Most of us, we are already familiar with this story. And this story begins with Samudra Manthan, with the episode of Samudra Manthan. So why is this Samudra Manthan necessary? Because in the beginning of time, in the beginning of creation, we find that according to the Puranas, the Devs and the Asurs, so they were constantly involved in a battle. Now, these Devs are the gods and the Asurs are demons. That is a very popular story, but I guess we all are familiar with that. We all know that. And actually, there is not much difference in them. So if we look at it closely, and it's often that the Asuras, the Asurs, they are more powerful, and the Devs, they lose the battles. Most of the times, they lose the battles, and they are killed in large numbers. So this one property which makes the Devatas, the because we see, if you consider the gods of Hinduism, like away from the religious perspective, you'll just see they are much like us, much like humans. And what makes them special, that is, we say, have you seen a very old god or a very old goddess, with the exception of Dhumavati in Hinduism, who is a widow and who is old? But without that, have you and I think Vishwakarma, the while in Bengal, Vishwakarma is very young and almost looks like Kartik, with very feminine features and jet black hair. But in some parts of some parts of in North India, Vishwakarma, instead of an elephant, he is seen on a swan, and he has got, he's white haired, he's old. And Brahma is obviously Pitamaho, or the grandfather of all beings, because Brahma, no, that's a separate story. I should not get into it, why Brahma is Pitamaha, but he's the great grandfather. With the exception, most of these gods, they never age. That is, in Bengali, we have this term Ojor Omor. Ojor is Ojor. Jor means Jora. That comes from Jora. That age doesn't strike them. And Omor, that is somebody who doesn't die, is Mor. Mor comes from Moronshil. So they do not die. Now, these essential characteristics of the gods, that was absent in the primitive ages. And so, what did they do? And we also have the story of Mrito Sanjivani. So, did they all die? No, in the beginning. And it is, just think of that. The guru of the Asuras was Shukracharya, and the guru of the Devatas was Brihaspati. Now, ironically, this Shukracharya, he knew about Mrito Sanjivani. Mrito Sanjivani was some kind of a technique, or some kind of a mantra, or a mantra that could revive the dead, that could bring them back to life, that could resurrect them, actually. And it is the gods who sent Brihaspati's son. Brihaspati had this son whose name was Koch, to him to learn this thing, and then several things took place, and that is also again a very long story. And we have got this beautiful piece of literature in Bengali, that is called Biday Abhishap, written by none other than Rabindranath Tagore, that involves the story about Brihaspati's son Koch and Shukracharya's daughter Devjani. And in recent times, we have this Bengali author Saurabh Mukhopadhyay. I read one of his pieces, that is Jugo Shambhavini, that is also based on Devjani and this episode. But not going into that. So, but and Koch, he did ultimately learn this Mrita Sanjeevani thing, but Shukracharya had cursed him that he couldn't use it. But ultimately, you see what happens, that with the effect of Mrita Sanjeevani, you are always dependent on somebody else to revive you, to resurrect you. But that doesn't grant you immortality in its true essence. So the next thing that the devas and the asuras, both of them, actually the devas thought of it, and the devas, they are very cunning. Actually, in Hindu mythology, don't consider it from a religious aspect, but the gods, they are not always very godlike. In fact, I'll just slightly deviate off the topic. The Asuras, in the true essence, are they really demons, or it is just the Aryans versus the non-Aryans? And that's a matter of research. But you see, the we hear of the Banoshenas in Ramayana. So, are they really monkeys, or are they just people who use the totem of monkeys? When we hear of Ulupi, the snake, a female snake, the snake princess that Arjun got married to, is she really a snake, or does she belong to a tribe who use the totem of the snakes? And even Ravan and Kumbhakarna, they are even worshipped in South India in some parts. When you hear of Ravan, and I'll just not the texts that come from their perspective, I'll just say in Ramayana, when Hanuman goes and visits Ravan for the first time, what does he say? He says, Aho Rupa Mahadharcha Mahasatya Mahaduti. So he says that Ravan is very beautiful. So there is nothing demon like in this definition, that Aho Rupa Mahadharcha Mahasatya Mahaduti. But what happens actually, in fact, this name Ravan, I'll just deviate again. This Ravan, this name Ravan, that is also attributed to a story that is closely associated with Shiv. And there's this depiction, I don't have the photo with me right now, but I had gone to Ajanta Ellora last year. It's a marvelous place. And in Ellora, there's this carving on the wall, that the 10 faced Ravana, he is holding up a mountain, and on that mountain sits Shiv and Parvati. So why did I say this? Because actually, if I remember the story correctly, Ravan had gone to Kailash to meet Shiv. He was a great devotee of Shiv, and but at that point, Shiv was busy with Parvati, and Nandi. He said Nandi, Shiv's one of his everybody knows who Nandi is, and we say Shiv's Bahan, and also maybe one of his most trusted servants, his associates. So Nandi says, no, you can't go there because the Divine Father is busy with the Divine Mother right now. But Ravan, that hurts his ego. So he decides that he'll pick up the entire Kailash with his hands, and so he attempts to do that. And Shiv, realizing what he is up to, in order to, get him out of this ego, he just presses the toe of his leg on the on Kailash very hard, and the entire mountain drops on his palm, on Ravan's palm. And all throughout the night, Ravan goes on like screaming in pain, and that scream in Bengali or in Sanskrit, it is known as Rob. So since he was screaming all through the night, from there we gather this name Ravan, from Rob to Ravan. Back to the story, I deviated pretty much from the story, but however, that the devs, what I mean to say, that the devs are always not very dev-like, or very god-like. They are cunning, they are shrewd, and time and again we'll see that they have just simply tricked the Shuras. And but history, if we consider that there is really something, some kind of a scratch behind the stories, history is always written from the winner's perspectives, and those who write history, they always portray themselves as heroes. And so they decide that they are going to churn the ocean, and then they are going to get Amrita, which is the elixir of life, the elixir to immortality. And they never had any intention with sharing this with the Asuras, because then both the parties are equal. Once again, the Asuras, they are also immortal as well. But they couldn't do this alone. So they had to seek the help of the Ashura. So they went, and the king of the Ashura was Bali at that point of time. So Indra goes to him and says that, okay, so let us just churn the ocean and both parties will become immortal. So both parties, they set off to churn the ocean, or Samudra Manthan. Now there are so many details of it, that Bashuk, that the Mandar Parvat, that was a churning rod, but it sunk too low into the sea, so the churning was not possible. And then we have the second avatar of Vishnu, that is Kurma avatar. Vishnu comes as the savior. He comes there to save the day in the form of a giant tortoise, and then the mountain is placed on his back, and Bashuki Nag, or also the Bhujango that adorns the neck of Shiva or the king of the snakes, because in almost, I think, in all of the mantras of Shiv, all the hand mantras of the Shiv, we hear of this great snake that he wraps around his neck. That is, if I remember, Karpura Gaurang Karunavataram Sansara Saram Bhujagendra Haram. So the Bhujagendra, the Indra of the Bhujango, sorry, Bhujango actually makes snake, and the Indra, the king of the snakes, who is like a har, who is like a necklace to him. So he volunteers that I'll become, and the devs, they want the Asuras to hold the the mouth of the Bashuki, but they say that we will not do that. Will be towards that tail, or and there's a confusion, but ultimately the churning begins. The Asuras, they think that it is not very, they shouldn't go towards the tail, and they ultimately they hold the head of the Bashuki, and so several things that comes, and the churning begins, and several things that come up of the come out of the ocean while the ocean is being churned. I don't know which ocean this is, because some text mention is at the Kirot Sagar, whatever. So there is Lakshmi or Shri who comes up. Then there is Uchchaisrobha, the horse that belongs to Indra, and Oiravat, the huge mammoth elephant that also belongs to Indra, and the Kaustav Muni, one of the most most precious stones according to Hindu mythology, that goes immediately to Vishnu, and all good things. Apsaras, the celestial beauties who are experts in dance and music, and finally, Dhanantori, the doctor god, he arrives with a pot of Amrito, and it is also said that even this Kumbh Mela that is going on now, that says that, but that is because, okay, I'll just go into it, that they say that the Ashuras, in a later period of time, they were running away with the Amrito, and a few drops of it spilled at 4 places. So at that place we have that Amrit Snan or the Kumbh Snan, but that is more of a folklore, and they were running away with it. It fell at 4 places on the earth, and it's auspicious to bath over there. But that is more of a folklore, more of a legend that comes down to generations. However, uh, what I was saying. So now we see that all good things, all good things, they are taken by all the Vedic gods. But there was one thing that also appeared out of the Samudra Manthan, that is Halahal, or Bish, as we say, poison, the deadliest poison that one can ever imagine. According to the Purans, it is capable of destroying an entire universe, and it couldn't be contained anywhere. And this is where Shiv comes in. And now just remember the description of my video, that Shiv, the god of the outcast. So this one thing that nobody can contain, that is capable of destroying the entire universe, and so they call this one person who has not been given any good thing, and they say, please drink it up to save the world. And ironically, in order to save the world, a person who comes up for a great sacrifice is none other than the Lord who has been attributed uh, to the destruction of the world. We know the three devs. The Brahma is for creation, Vishnu is for nurturing, and Shiv is the destroyer. Also his name Rudro. So one who causes destruction and then runs away from there. So he is now invited in to have this worst possible thing that could come up from here, and he drinks the poison and contains it in his throat. I'll come to that later. But just think of it. And we have this poem in Bengali that is written by Nojrul Islam, that is Daritro. It is not exactly attributed to Shiv. But I just remember this lines that he says, Torol gorol কণ্ঠে ঢালি কহ তুমি অমৃতে কি ফল জ্বালা নাই নেশা নাই উন্মাদনা হে দুর্বল অমরার অমৃত সাধনা এ দুঃখের পৃথিবীতে তোর ব্রত নহে তুই নাগ জন্ম তোর বেদনার দহে কাঁটা কুঞ্জে বসি তুই গাঁথিবি মালিকা দিয়ে গেনু ভালে তোর বেদনার টিকা. So if we just translate it into English, it says that Torol Gorol, that you pour liquid poison into your being, and you say that, what am I to do with Amrita? What am I to do with the elixir of life? There is Jala nai, Nesha nai, nahi Unmadana. That doesn't intoxicate me, that doesn't enthrall me, that doesn't make me feel pain. So what am I to do with that? হেরে তোর পল অমরার অমৃত সাধনা দে দুঃখের পৃথিবীতে তোর ব্রত নহে. You are born out of grief in this world that is full of grief and sorrow. You are not the one who is destined to drink the elixir of life. And God, you are the one who is to, who is destined to engulf all, all, all of the poison that is generated out of life, generated out of the universe, all bad things, everything that people get appalled, that appalls other beings, that kills everybody else. You are the one who is capable of engulfing that. And I don't think that is that could be there could be any better definition of Shiv for that matter. Because if you just come to think of it for once, that it's just so beautiful, because it's something that you cannot put into words. You just have to go to sit for 2 minutes and just realize it. So coming back to the story, he drinks this poison, and also he cannot, engulf it completely. He stores that poison in his throat, and as a result, his throat turns blue in color due to the color of the poison, and that is why he is known as Neelkanth. Now we know why he is known as Neelkanth, because the blue-throated one, and this is the story behind him becoming Nilkantha. And actually, there has been so many depictions of this incident in popular literature and in movies and songs as well. So I remember there is this recent movie Jatishwar, and I also by Srijit Mukherjee, and I think also in Antony Firingi, where there's this Bengali song where they say that when when you were in pain, when you were just screaming, and that scorching pain was burning your throat due to that poison, and so then did you ask for, and you called Durga, ডেকে ছিলে Durga বলে, and then did you forget that she's your wife, she's your Shakti, and did you, at that moment of pain, because when we are in pain, we call for our mother, and she's the mother of this universe as well. So did you by mistake call her your mother? So Bhule ke deke chile janoni. So there is this one song. I don't know whether there is any kind of story that is supporting this fact, or whether just it's something a beautiful imagination by the poet or by the lyricist. And there is also this thing. There is this famous novel, and it's an excellent novel by Narayan Shannal. Called Rupa Manjuri, where he gives us a brief insight into. There's this one chapter of it where there is the hero goes, not the hero exactly, the protagonist, he goes on traveling about Bengal, and there he talks about different places of Bengal. So he also talks about Tarokeshwar over here. Tarokeshwar is a very famous Shiv temple here in Bengal. So there he says in Tarukeshwar, the main person who built up this temple was somebody called Mukunda Ghosh. He was a milkman by profession. So he said that actually there is, I don't know, I have never been to Tarukeshwar. I don't know whether it is true or not. There is a small hole, a small dent on the Shivling over there. And he said that according to Mukunda Ghosh, that is when Shiv drank that poison and that scorching pain, and he was also intoxicated, because poisons have got this intoxicating power. So there he writes that actually this dent on the forehead of the lingam, that is actually on there's no forehead of the lingo, but this dent on this lingo, that is due because he had fallen down in pain, and he had got Shiv had got this dent on his forehead. So that is why there's this dent on this lingo. I don't know if there are any stories supporting this fact or not, but that is in Rupa Manjuri Part 1 by Narayan Shannal. So that is all about Neelkantha, and why Shiv is called, why Mahadev is called Neelkantha. And there is also this very famous temple, Neelkantha Mahadev temple, in I think in Uttarakhand, and it is said that that is the place where Shiv drank this halahal, or this poison. So, and that is why I say that that is the first part. I'll go further into the topic, that why I consider that Shiv is a god of the outcast, a deity of the outcast. And I think we already saw that something that is not accepted by anybody, that is refused by everybody, there's something that appalls all around. Uh, that is there for Shiv. Shiv is invited for that, and he willingly he takes that in. So I will come back with the next part of, and several other instances, several other stories, and also several other names of Shiv. While the Dokho calls him Noshto Janopriyo, and there is his name called Bhutoban, many other stories, and how he appears as a Kirat, and his dresses, and of his origin, the Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, how we come across the depiction of Shiv in the prehistoric era. Everything is associated with this fact. Why Shiv is called a god of the outcasts. So I think I'll see you again in next video. Till then, thank you.